The 5 best most horrifying things discovered in the world. One. The Midnight Terror Cave of Screams and Bones. Sandwiched between Mexico's southern border and the Caribbean Sea is the Central American nation of Belize. More than half the country is covered with tropical rainforests, per a World Atlas. There you'll encounter mangroves, mountains, macaws, a prehistoric-looking stork called the jabiru, and one of the world's prettiest sinkholes. Once the stomping ground of the Mayan civilization, Belize is peppered with temples and caves where Mayans sacrificed other humans to their gods, typically via decapitation and heart removal. It's been said that people have heard terrified screams emanating from one of those caves at night. In fact, it was said by the Washington Post in 2015. The forebodingly named Midnight Terror Cave is located deep in the Belizean countryside and has a 60-foot drop, at the bottom of which rescuers saw a looter surrounded by thousands of human bones. You might wonder whether the screams came from the looter or the anguished ghosts of whomever all those bones belong to. Or maybe they're the looter's screams in response to whatever those anguished ghosts were doing to him. In all there were about 9,000 bones, and archaeologists believe many of them belonged to children who were sacrificed by the Mayans in the 9th century. Some came from up to 200 miles away, leaving experts scratching their heads about why kids would have been taken that far for that purpose. 2. A forest mummy full of bees. In southwestern Poland is a place called Lower Silesia, which the New Yorker described as a land of treasure hunters. Fortune seekers believe that under the mountains and towering, arrow-like trees of the area's deep pine forests are gold, jewels, art, and even sophisticated weapons that were allegedly hidden by the Nazis who occupied Lower Silesia during World War II. U.S. troops did indeed find gold in a minute in 1945, but in 2016 a different kind of find made headlines. As reported by Science in Poland, the partially mummified body of a man was found, not beneath the ground but roughly 80 feet above it in a spruce tree. It had been there for 13 years. The man had on 2 pairs of pants, which, combined with atmospheric conditions and the inability of predators and scavengers to reach him, kept his body relatively intact. Discussing such a grisly discovery might not sound like a time to mention child rearing, but biologists discovered honeybees, wasps, and a squirrel nesting inside the man. Researchers claim it's the first known example of that happening anywhere in the world. Presumably, it inspired the world's first nightmare about being stung from the inside by bees and wasps. Apparently, the corpse resembled the hollow of a tree, making it look like an ideal shelter for bee babies and other woodland offspring. 3. Cliffside coffins along a scenic river. Yangtze is Chinese for child of the ocean, per Live Science, but it's a name predominantly used by Westerners in reference to the mother of all Asian rivers. Stretching over 3,900 miles, the Yangtze is Earth's 3rd longest river. It's so massive that most Chinese people apparently just call it Changjiang, or Long River. Navigating this gargantuan waterway will provide you with breathtaking views of China's many mountains and cliffs. In 1982, the UNESCO World Heritage Center recognized the Three Gorges portion of the river as one of the most scenic spots on the planet. 3 years later, Wang Haoman, then a journalist for National Geographic, saw something along the Yangtze that some might call unsightly. Wang saw coffins mounted 300 feet high along the cliffside like morbid ornaments, and they definitely weren't empty. Known as hanging coffins, they were placed on wooden stakes or inside caves. Wang soon became obsessed. At first, it was simply how the hell did they get there, he recalled, and then I couldn't stop thinking about why. Researchers determined that the oldest hanging coffins go back about 3,000 years, and writings from the Tang dynasty indicate that a higher elevation signified greater reverence for the deceased. In some cases, coffins contained multiple corpses. Exactly how they were mounted remains a mystery. 4. The skeleton tree of the Wild Atlantic Way. Ireland's western coast is called the Wild Atlantic Way, and for outdoorsy types it's basically 1,500 miles of natural light candy. If you've been there or Googled pictures of it, you've probably seen the abundance of lush hills, cliffs, castles, intensely hued skies, rocky islands, and stunning views of the water. There are also much less stunning views of trees and fields. But in 2015, Something stunning emerged from underneath one of those unremarkable arbors after the wicked winds of a storm uprooted it. As history detailed, buried beneath a beech tree were the old bones of a young man. According to archaeologist Marion Dowd, when the tree fell, it snapped the skeleton in two, with the top half attached to the roots and the lower half still in the ground. The man was likely between 17 and 20 years old and died sometime between 1030 and 1200. The tree, which was 215 years old, was probably planted without any knowledge of the body. Cuts on the skeleton's ribcage and hand suggest the man was stabbed to death, though it's not clear why he wound up in that spot. Records show that there was once a cemetery around there, but no other burials were found near him. 5. Antarctica's Penguin Mummy Graveyard. Antarctica, also known as Antarctica. You may know it for its blinding icy whiteness, deadly crevices, 200 miles per hour winds, severely limited internet, and the fact that people go crazy there, likely due to the lack of internet. You may also know Antarctica for penguins, nature's cutest crime victims. Those waddling slabs of sadness lead exceedingly harsh lives wherein they kidnap each other's young, carnally violate one another, and have been boiled for lamp oil. In 2016, Antarctic darkness and penguin peril combined like a sinister Captain Planet, giving scientists more reasons to dread Antarctica and feel even more sympathy for penguins. As reported by Live Science, a team of researchers on East Antarctica's Long Peninsula came across an area littered with hundreds of mummified penguins, most of them babies. They also found poop because penguins deal with a bunch of crap, including and especially their own. There are many ways a person might react in that situation, and most of them involve teardrops and expletives. But the scientists sought to determine what caused all the awfulness they saw. The evidence pointed to two separate waves of extreme weather and flooding, one of which occurred roughly 750 years ago and another that happened about 200 years ago. Professor Li Gangsun explained, it is quite likely that global climate warming caused enhanced precipitation, which led to the tragedy.